how I would view wealth. True wealth, as you've seen so often, it's almost a cliche, is health, the love of family and
Yes.
friends, and peace.
I love all
And
that.
if you have to sacrifice any of those to acquire money, the only person you're fooling is yourself. Because if you can't maintain health, you can't buy health. You can't, right? You
No.
can't buy the love of family and friends. You can't buy peace. And so if you have to sacrifice any of those, you're making a mistake.
All right, welcome everybody back to the Growing Money with Sean Trace podcast. I've got a really interesting guest with me. Now, would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Bernie Youngblood. So I am serial entrepreneur by accident. I started out
Nice.
in the area of finance, but then, of course, I got drawn into sales and marketing. A number of entrepreneurial ventures over the years. Current focus is finding the intersections between for-profits, nonprofits, and artists communities. But of course, we're not here to talk about artists. We're here to talk about money. So we can dive into that. I'll turn it back to you.
We can talk a little bit about everything, though. Like I like that because, I once had someone come up to me and said, "Oh, you're doing the starving artist thing," and I was like, not really. I'm like just building and creating. But when we started, before we got into this conversation, we had a pre-conversation, just a short one, and we were talking about this. And you said you didn't want to upset me talking about money in a way that was different than what most people assumed. And I was like, hey man, I'm open for any conversations. And one of the things too that I brought up is that I am not a crypto bro. I don't have a crazy following of people that have one mindset about money. And honestly, more of what this podcast is I'm a father with a 9-year-old daughter who asks me questions about money. And a couple years ago, she was asking me questions and I did not have the answer. And I still don't have a lot of the answers. And I started saying, maybe I should start talking to people who do know more about these things, people who know more about some of the answers to this stuff than I do. And what I found out is that there's people that have information, but not always the answers. But there was an underlying theme that kind of wove its way through the conversations I was having. And one of the principles that I wanted to bring back to my daughter was that money is a tool. It's not something to be worshipped. It is not something that is, should be elevated. It's like, imagine you have a group of people. A knife is a very wonderful thing. I love knives. I love cooking with knives. I have a really nice knife upstairs that cuts things very well. Now, that doesn't mean that it should be elevated above fork. It just means knife is a really good thing and it serves me great. When I want to cut a piece of meat, it cuts it well. When I cut a piece of fruit, it cuts it well. But if I'm not careful, knife can also cut me. And, and that's the thing. And if you are not careful, that tool that you are so hyper focused on can be something that can bite you and whip you back around. And I want to talk to you about your kind of direction, because one of the things too, you're talking about artists and money. Like for an artist, if you want to make an album, you need money to make the album. My wife is a musician. And, as much as we'd love to say, I want to spread music around the world, well, you need to have money to put together a song. And certainly you can be smart. And one of the things that I see with musicians is they're not always smart with money. We had some people that came to us and they go, you need to pay us X number of dollars. Like, let's say it was not in dollars. So let's say you need to pay us $5,000 for a song. And, then there's someone else who's charging $500 a song. And $500 song person is exceptionally talented. And, we found someone who was able to write and produce and help us make this music. And we were able to create a package and something that was exceptional. Now, some of the artists are like, I need to get that most expensive thing. And that might not be the best for you because you're still in this thing about worshiping the money, not about creating art. And that's where, again, I think that we have to have the proper perspective. Are you looking at this tool and seeing how it can serve you? Or are you simply enamored by it itself? Sorry for diving down a weird
Oh,
tangent right
no.
when we started, but
Oh,
I'd love
no.
to hear your perspective.
Money's a difficult subject to talk about. I agree. It is a tool. It is a tool, but I will add to that, it is also a
Do
gift.
please do. I love
As
that.
a Bible thumping Jesus freak, I'll tell you, money is a gift from God. And with that, along with that, comes obligation.
Ooh,
The so, but I think what we're really driving towards is how do we define wealth?
there we go.
Because making $1 million, 100 million, a billion. Soon we're going to have the first trillionaire, and I believe the first trillionaire is going to be a surprise. I think we're going to be surprised who that person's going to be. No predictions, but how we define wealth, I think, is more important.
Mm,
And from my standpoint, I should, of course, the qualifier being, I've been around a while. I've been around long enough to know. I've been around long enough to know that I know nothing
yeah,
and less every day.
I love that.
But that being said, and free advice is worth what you pay. But that being said, how I would view wealth, true wealth, as you've seen so often, it's almost a cliche, is health, the love of family and
Yes.
friends, and
Mm-hmm.
peace.
I love all that.
And if you have to sacrifice any of those to acquire money, you're fooling you're the only person you're fooling is yourself. Because if you can't maintain health, you can't buy health. You can't, right? You
No,
can't buy the love of family and friends. You can't buy peace. And so if you have to sacrifice any of those, uh, you're making a mistake.
I love that. There was a post that I saw the other day. I'm gonna have to get this up, and it was from one of the financial pages, and or just some news outlet, and I read that and I was like, okay, that's not. 24-year-old woman saved $97,000 by eating only eggs and bread every day. Okay, she aims to save $1,300 by age 40. And I was like, and she's not going to make it much past that
No.
because she's not taking care of her health. And when I read that, I was thinking about these extremes that people will go to.
Yes.
There was a story the other day that someone was using, I think, some AI source to get health advice. And this person was going to an extreme. And what was interesting was that they had caused this condition that hadn't been seen since the 1900s when people were eating this really weird food. And when the doctor started looking at this person going, what in the world is going on here? Because we know what this is, but why would this person have this condition? And they found was that this person followed such an extreme diet because they thought something was bad for them. And they started eating something else, and it caused them to get really, really sick. And so when we are not focusing on, one of the guests I had come on was talking about there's all these different facets of wealth. And she was like, it's not just money wealth. You have family wealth, you have friendship wealth, you have spiritual wealth. Do you
Yes.
have a spiritual walk? Are you feeling wealthy? I have a family member who is not financially wealthy. They don't have, they didn't set aside for their retirement. They are not in a place right now where they can, have some of the freedom that they would like. But that person has a spiritual walk that is so rich that if I asked that person, are you wealthy? They would unequivocally, I don't even know if they would 100%, I can't even
Yes.
say the right word right now,
Yes. Yes.
say yes. They would say I'm wealthy because they are rich spiritually. And yet they would probably also want to work on some of their financial wealth because it's not just one asset. I am not financially wealthy right now. I would like to be more so, but not just because of money, because of what I can do with it. Because I know that if I have more finances, I will be able to create more media and I will be able to spread more of the word and message that I think the world needs to hear. Something of positivity, of hope, and
Yes.
of that. But I am wealthy in family. Today, my wife and I had a really tough day. and she didn't have hope. And I sat down with her and I said, on days like today, right here, this is where your hope is. And when you don't have it, then
Yes.
it's right here inside of
Yes.
me. And on those days that you don't have hope, I will hold that for you.
Yes.
And, and in that moment, she was emotional. And I sat there and I thought about that afterwards. And I said, that's going to be one of those moments where I look back at the end of my life and say, that moment right there was where I truly was wealthy.
Yeah.
And so I love that you're bringing this up, because I feel like the people that are like, that post, we're so driven by this or that or the
Yeah.
other. But one of the most important things in life is finding balance,
Yes.
whether that be financial balance. And I mean, and some of us financially are not balanced because we're seeking, we're devouring. You're trying for more, more, more. And there's a never ending amount of more. I guarantee you, Elon
Yes.
Musk wants more. I
Yes.
guarantee you that the richest people in the world want more. And when you ask them why, I doubt. I'm gonna throw Jeff Bezos under the bus, and I don't know him personally, but you look at his wedding, like he had all of the biggest celebrities, all
Right.
of this and that. But when people said, "How many of these people do you think he actually knows?" You know, they were just the biggest names. It was more. All of that wedding was more. Let's go to the fanciest vacation. Let's do this. But is more giving them anything?
Well, my and I love what you say, what you're saying there. My youngest son took a missions trip to Costa Rica a while back, and Costa Rica, lovely country, lovely people, but it's much of the many folks down there are impoverished by our definition. And so, as he spent time down there ministering to the folks that were coming through Costa Rica, these folks were living in aluminum huts. They had
Yeah,
nothing, right? The kids would, and much like we did when we were young, they were playing stickball. They didn't
yeah,
have all the toys that we have today. They were drinking water out of the hose like we used to when we were growing up, and they were living day to day. And what was most astonishing about this, and what the message my son came home with, which he still believes to this day, those are some of the happiest people he's ever met.
right.
Those are some of the most contented, most satisfied people he'd ever met. And when you peel it back, that's where the definition comes from. They had good health, they had the love of family and friends, and they had peace in their lives. And I think one of the challenges we have, and particularly in our culture, is we measure ourselves at the wrong level. We believe that life starts at millionaire, and then you have to start working. And if you're lucky, you get to billionaire, and then you'll be happy. And pretty soon they'll raise that to trillionaire, of course. And that comes with a whole host of issues, some of which you brought up. One of the challenges being, if you are fortunate to receive that gift, large sums of money, win the lottery, business, whatever it may be, all too often that separates you from, you sacrifice your health to get there, separates you from family and friends they because they don't feel equity, right?
Hmm.
For good or bad reason. And it separates you from your peace because you can't answer your phone anymore. You can't walk
Yeah,
outside anymore. You can't go to a restaurant anymore.
right.
So careful what you wish for, as they say. Anonymity is is a warm blanket, to quote a movie from long ago, and you lose that when
Yeah,
you accumulate wealth, particularly do it publicly, as Mr. Bezos has. He can't have too many friends at his wedding because he's lost. Sadly, he has likely lost his friends.
it's challenging because once I got to work in movies a long time ago, and I actually had this one of the nicest people I met in cinema was Tom Hanks. Just a genuinely cool, down to earth, lovely
Yeah.
human being, and not at all like the characters he plays. He's very thoughtful. The man always carries around a book. He's always reading. He is just a genuinely nice human being. And he was full of stories. I remember we were working on the Sony lot and we were standing there and I was looking at this wall, reading the movies that had been filmed in this one soundstage. And I looked up and I was like, hey, that's Joe versus the volcano.
Yeah. Love
And
it.
then and he's suddenly I hear this voice behind me. Now it was wild when we filmed that.
Wow.
Like the floor was opened up and they had I was just like, and he just launched into this long story. And was absolutely blown away by him and in his just normalness. And one of the things that I found with him was that when we were talking about, oh man, I had this great story. What were you talking about? I just lost it. I lost it.
Health, love of family and friends, and peace. And money can separate and not to take us too far down a dark path, money is a tool, but keep in mind, it is a tool that can be used by the Dark Lord. A tool that can be used by the Dark Lord to separate you, right, from that which you should hold dear. And all too often, and this is a very challenging thing to say, but I'm going to say it.
Please do.
All too often, I believe I have witnessed individuals being fabulously successful for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
Because if you're going into the wrong business for the wrong reason and you find yourself making lots of money, guess what? You might not have the right captain at the wheel, so to speak.
Yeah.
And as you continue down that path, and we see this so often. I work with a lot of high net worth individuals, a lot of estate and family and foundation folks, and I ask them all the same question because we talk about legacy. You know, you want to build a $100 million portfolio, and wouldn't that be great? And I want to leave a legacy to my children, and wouldn't that be wonderful? But then I challenge them with the question: how often? And I ask this question all the time. How often have you seen the case where you drop $25 million on a 25-year-old? And how often has it not completely ruined his life? Real question. And all the times I've asked that question in estate planning, family office, in these circles, I can tell you very rarely do folks have a positive response. Maybe once, maybe twice. Pragmatically, you drop $25 million. You drop a $25 million inheritance on a 25-year-old. You will ruin their life.
Yeah,
99 times out of 100. That's the statistic. Anecdotal, admittedly, but that's the statistic. So what are we doing?
Yeah,
And there's an entire industry that has evolved for the purpose of accumulating wealth to pass it. In fact, I forget the statistic, the baby boomers are dying off. There is something like $77 trillion in wealth about to pass. It's going to be the
largest wealth transfer in history.
Yeah. And guess what? If you're in the cocaine business or if you're a hooker, you're going to be in good shape because that's where most of that money is going to be going.
Right.
And that's not a good thing.
Right. My wife was talking about this, and she was like, if you were to become very rich, would you let it go to your head? Would you turn out bad? Would you do one of these other things? And I said, no, I wouldn't. Even if I had $100 million right now, I wouldn't change because I know who I am, because I've been through the fire.
You say
but
that.
A 25-year-old me with $100 million, yeah, that would be tough. That would be real tough.
Here's the next problem. Your brother is struggling with a medical condition. Your neighbor's car broke down. Your uncle has a business that's in trouble. I apologize for being the bearer of bad news, but as soon as somebody finds out, guess what? Sean's worth $100 million. the guy you knew in high school, you owe him $20. He's gonna call you and say, and he
Yeah.
wants his $20 back. But if you cannot, and and I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble for saying these things, but if you can't crack the code to find some way to, rising tide lifts all ships,
I
you're gonna
love
lose
that.
those. You're gonna lose those friends. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying this is how it should be. It's not fair. It's not supposed to be fair. But you're sitting on $100 million, and your uncle goes into bankruptcy and loses his house. There's going to be a problem. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a good thing, but that's just how that's how our culture works.
There was a story about, I love the green zones. Blue zones. Blue
Blue
zones.
zones,
Blue
yes,
zones.
yes,
The story, it was on Netflix, and I absolutely was fascinated by the documentary. If you haven't watched it, anybody watching this, go
highly
watch it. It's
recommend.
highly recommend it. But they were talking about the people of Okinawa, and the
Yes,
Okinawan people. They were studying them, and there was a couple things that they were like, "What is it?" Because the scientists were like, "What is it that is making these people live longer?" And they were like, "Is it the purple yams? Is that something that's very different
yes,
for Okinawa? Is one of the main staples of their main staple carbohydrate is a type of purple yam? And is it this or that?" But they were trying to figure it out, and it wasn't any one factor. There was all of these factors, and that was like these things as they started comparing blue zones. But there's something across the blue zones that they were starting to look at, and they noticed, and it was one of the core things was a sense of community. One of
yes,
the things that's special about Okinawa is that the old people in Okinawa have a communal money system.
yeah,
And it's not like everyone shares money, but like the groups watch out for each other. And
right,
if it's like the people will live in these networks, and it's kind of like a neighborhood, but it's bigger than that. It's more organized than that. And it's like these groups, and they'll be like, it's essentially like a group of people that are like, we're going to care for each other. We're going to
yes,
watch out for each other. And it's important. And one of the things too is I think that after living in Asia for so long, I look back at some of my friends in the West and our fierce individualism, and
yes.
I go, there's something that's not quite right about that at times. And I mean, and I grew up in, I'm not a Bible. How does that Bible
Bible
thumping?
thumping Jesus freak.
I love that. I would not be classified as that, though I am Christian and I did grow up in the church. I, though, love the community that I grew up around. I mean, when I was, anytime that someone had a problem at church, like everyone would come together for them. And
Yes,
that community was always a core part and is still a core part of my life. I don't see all my friends in the States that often, but people that were part of my church, that were part of my college community that was a Christian college, we still reach out. We still help each other. We still are connected. And where I'm going with all of this is that maybe we need to rethink what it means to be wealthy and what we do with wealth.
for sure.
Because, if you are not a person who has that degree of influence and that is able to do something with it, and I think that's where I was getting where I lost my track with Tom Hanks. One of the things that I noticed about him when I got to talk to him was that with his movies, with his stories, the stories he tells, there was a mission and a
Yeah,
vision for a better world that we could have. He's one of those believers of the World War II generation was the greatest generation. Like this people that would sacrifice everything for what was right.
yes,
Whether you believe this or that, what Hitler and the Nazis were doing was wrong.
right.
This was evil incarnate. These people were doing bad things, and ordinary people were willing to step up and step up against evil. And my point being, coming back to, I think that we're who was it? What's the name? Warren, Purpose Driven Life.
Sure.
Maybe
Yes.
maybe we need to start having a purpose-driven finance as well, where we have to start thinking about why do you want that money? Well, I want to help people. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Well, in what way are we going to help people?
Well, I'll take it a step further because I love what
Please
you're
do.
saying. I'll take that step further to issue a challenge to the audience to
I love
suggest,
it.
hey, you want to be a millionaire? That's great. How many folks, your friends, your neighbors, can you take with you? Right?
Ooh,
It's you can make $1 million. Great. Bully you. But can you take 2 people with you? Can you take
I love it.
4 people with you? It's such a cliche. You form a small company and you build the company and you make lots of money, and too often you learn about how they screwed their partner. That person got screwed. That person got screwed. Yeah,
Yep.
just terrible example. But the challenge being, how many of those friends, neighbors, relatives can you work with to take with you, so that rising tide lifts all ships? Yes. So you don't have to separate yourself from that community. You can bring your community with you. And if I might go one step further than that, I think what we're going to see, and I've been delving into this, the coming era of AI. AI is advantage individual contributor or small team.
Yeah.
By leveraging this technology, it is even more possible, right? It makes it even easier, dare I say, for small teams to succeed. So yes,
Yep.
okay, great. Form a small team and let's take all those folks with you, right?
Yes.
That's something that a challenge I might issue.
I love that.
Yeah.
One of the people that I think should be a hero, and not for the reason people think, and one of the reasons that he's overlooked for, and I'm going to say someone who's a little controversial because everything he creates is very materialistic, but MrBeast. We're going to talk about
Oh
MrBeast for
boy.
a second.
Oh no.
And I'm going to talk about him in a way that a lot of people don't know.
The hair on the back of my kid's neck just stood up because we
Right.
we've had many long debates about MrBeast. I can't
Gen
wait.
Z and Gen Alpha will get triggered, but
This is going to be fun.
I want to talk about one area only. One area that I think that is interesting. When Jimmy Donaldson was faced with the option of doing what a lot of creators did and moving his production base out of his hometown, because where he started, and go to LA,
Yeah.
go to New York, or go to one of these other areas, Jimmy said, no, I'm building here in Greenville, North Carolina. And he has now been probably the single largest driving force to change the trajectory of that area by bringing in some of the top talent in YouTube and creation into a region that wasn't known for that. And that's amazing. And this is, I think, one of the definitions of a rising tide lifts all ships. He single-handedly raised that community upward. And whether you like his content or not, you got to say, you know what, that's really powerful what he did for his community, because he said, I don't want to leave these people behind. If I'm getting success, then I want to be successful around the people that I came up with. And it's powerful because we all are faced with that. The other day, I'm building out my business, and my wife and I were talking, and we work and live closely with her family, her sister and her parents. And I was hiring people for my company. And I looked at my wife and I said, we have this new position that's really we need to fill. And I need someone who's really can help me grow in this space. And we can hire outside. But I said, the person I'd love to hire would be your sister, because she's so talented and just no one has ever believed in her or given her the chance and said, I think she can do this. But I said, I think she's one of the smartest people I know. But no one's given her this role that she can step into. And I said, we can pay someone outside, or we can pay someone that's connected to us and we can see her success. That money that we make can get channeled into her, and then she can channel it into her kids. And that community will also support our daughter. And it's like this beautiful thing of not leaving anyone behind. And I go down another tangent. When I was younger, not a kid, I'm definitely not that young. And now it's coming back, was the movie Lilo and Stitch. And
Sure.
Ohana means
Big fan.
not leave. Yeah,
Family.
Ohana means leaving no one behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's family, and it's like one of the things that I love with that is that no one gets left behind, and that's where I like, if you are gifted with that wealth, if you are gifted with that God given financial abundance, because I want to call it what it is, you know what? And I believe that all abundance comes from the divine. If you are having a blessing on your plate, you need to say thanks to where that's coming from, because that's in my belief. If you are entrusted with that, and not just gifted that, entrusted with that, then you should be doing something good with it.
Oh,
And
I
good,
agree. It
we
is an
can talk
obligation.
about. It is an
Yes.
obligation.
Yes.
It is an obligation.
Yes. You must be. We are all, speaking to the Christian faith, we are all called to be stewards of
Yeah.
everything that we are gifted on earth, and of course to lift others up. But speaking to MrBeast, because it's an ongoing debate
Please
with
do.
myself and my kids. My kids are 21 and 24, but they'll always be kids, even though they're grown adults. The so MrBeast certainly has been gifted fame and fortune,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. And MrBeast has done wonderful things for his community. For he's developing healthy organic foods, right?
Yeah.
Snacks, and he's
Chocolates.
digging wells in Africa.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any better than that. But as you suggest, with great wealth comes great responsibility. And I think he's very young, and I'll on the public airwaves, I'll say it this way: I'm looking forward to watching how his organization matures through the
Yeah.
years, because someone like MrBeast, he could run for president someday, right?
100%.
And to use that analogy, and I'd vote for him, right? Because I love crazy people, and he's a little crazy. So, that being said, okay, let's play this out. If he's going to run for president someday, then he needs to do something more than videos of panic rooms and kids jumping off of roofs and dousing themselves with God knows what. The Yeah, YouTube, I understand, was born out of this era of sensation, sex, and shock sells.
Yeah.
But he's got to. I think he's got to work to transition to what's next for his brand, because that won't get him elected. Um, that would be if I was his campaign advisor, that would be my suggestion. We got to do what's next. You know, digging wells in Africa is great, but I think you can do more, because obviously he's been entrusted with quite a lot. So
Hmm.
we'll have to see. I'm looking forward to watching that organization mature.
I love that. And it's interesting because, one of the things that I like that you're poking at is that organizations, people, on some level, I believe that we are all here in some type of, not video game, but we're here to learn lessons. And we're here to grow people, organizations, and that I think that for all of us, when people ask, well, why this? Why does this? I think that we are here to grow spiritually, physically, and and one of those things that we have to learn is that there's a lot of things we have to learn. Like, what are you going to do? Not just with the all that's entrusted to you, but what are you going to do with your time here? There is one of my favorite movies is a movie called Fury. I'm a huge movie fan.
I don't think I've seen
Fury,
that one.
Brad Pitt, and it's so good. Brad Pitt, I'm not remembering everyone's name right now. Logan Lerman, Shia LaBeouf, and they play a tank crew in World War II.
Wow.
It's so
Big
good.
Brad Pitt fan.
Yeah, it's probably his best. It is an amazing. You have not seen it, you must go watch it.
Right.
Um, and in one section, they are sitting there, and the tank has been damaged. They're at a crossroads, and a whole platoon of Waffen SS are headed right towards them. And they are given this opportunity, like they can abandon the tank and go and live another day. And they're like, that platoon is headed toward this village, and we know we have brothers in arms there. And if not me, then who? If not me, then who? And there's a scene there where Shia LaBeouf's character starts quoting a Bible verse, and I can't remember which one it is, but it was talking about, I heard the voice of the Lord calling, and and I said, whom shall I send? And I said, send me.
Wow.
And in that scene, we all have a choice. We have a choice to be small, to go with the flow, to not make waves. Or we have a choice to step up and in that moment say, when the universe starts calling, God starts calling and says, whom shall I send? And you say, me. I am here. I'm here to make a difference.
Yeah. A purpose-driven life. So I might, if I could extend that,
Please do.
we see on social media all the time. And as an old man, I spend far too much time on social media. I will
As
acknowledge
do
that.
I.
But to speak to money, let's talk about money for a second here.
I love it.
What social media will tell you is, and you see these videos, go to Instagram, TikTok, and what's hot, what's relevant, what's trending, and find out what's trending, and then do that. Okay, well, what that
Yeah.
means is salamander farms are trending. Great. So go make a bunch of. This is the thing. So go make a bunch of videos about salamander farms and content and sales funnels and clickbait. Well, all the things, and you'll make a lot of money. Great. Now you spent 6 years being a salamander farm expert, and you make a bunch of money. Who the cares about this? What you speak to, I think, is more important, the purpose-driven life. Because to come back to faith, as I promised you I would, I believe we've all been given gifts. And if you are so fortunate as to discover your gift during your life, and some are not, I'm still looking for mine. If you are so fortunate as to discover your gift during your life, it is then your obligation to share it with the world. And I believe if you do that, you can not only find wealth, but you can find peace, right? Because you're doing what it is that you were always meant to do. And that's probably not salamander farm content creation.
Right.
So now, to add to that, it's important to point out, particularly younger folks, life is not a sprint. It is a marathon.
No.
The tortoise. Everyone knows the story. Everyone knows the story of the tortoise and the hare, and everyone knows who won. It was the tortoise that won. Life is cumulative. The money you make, the friends you make, the skills you build are cumulative. If you think you're smart at the age of 25, imagine how smart you're going to be at the age of 55, right?
Right.
If you think you're powerful, if you think you're wealthy at the age of 30, think of imagine what you can do 20 years hence, right? Life is, and one of the, they don't teach this stuff in schools. It just, don't get me
No.
started on that. Something I might recommend. I'm going to watch Fury for sure. But something else I might recommend is a board game. There's a gentleman that many people have known, many people have heard about by the name of Robert Kiyosaki. Wrote a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, did all these things. I won't, and there's lots of issues around these public personas, but one of the things Robert Kiyosaki gifted to the world is a board game. And Monopoly is great because Monopoly teaches you that money's a tool, and of course, the end state of Monopoly was the point of the game, and we're reaching that in our own capitalist economy now, but we'll talk about that later. But the board game that Robert Kiyosaki delivered into the world is called Cash Flow.
Mhm.
And I think as we approach the age of AI, this is going to be more important than ever. Again, advantage, individual, or small team. What and I recommend everyone go out and get the board game Cash Flow. And if you're old like me, get it for your kids.
Mhm.
Because what it teaches, the game is fun, it's entertaining, it's a great evening, but what it teaches is transformative. It's one of the best examples I've ever seen. There's books on this, of course, but through a board game, what it teaches is the difference between paycheck mentality and business owner mentality. And it's like a light switch. When you're playing the game, when you get it, the light bulb goes off and you can, and not, no disrespect on the corporate world. It's a great thing. Wonderful. Love these people. But for those who feel that they have the itch to be an entrepreneur, to be a business owner, that board game will give you a window into that experience that unlike any tool or similar board game I've seen can do. Cash Flow by Robert Kiyosaki. Highly recommend.
Mhm. I love it. The I love his stuff, Rich Dad Poor Dad, as well, because it one of the things that I was always so bad at was kind of, it's a mindset shift. And I think that, like, the why I don't have that game yet, and I have seen him talk about it, and I need to get it for my daughter
Yes.
because it is a mindset shift. We have to have this mindset shift. And I think this whole meeting today, we've been talking about mindset shifts. And, and it's not just our relationship with others, it's our relationship with how we interact with money and how it's going to serve, how it serves us and how we serve the world, and
Yes.
it's like this place because, and one of the things that we're not talking about is that whether you want to have that relationship with money or not, you're still having a relationship with it.
Yes.
It's still, you're still in it, and the financial stress will bury you
Yes.
if you are not approaching it correctly. And, the health risks from not handling finances correctly are a huge deal. And we have to start changing the way that we interact with money, the way we look at money, the way we talk about money. And certainly it's not the end all be all, but it's the one area of our life that you are going to interact with whether you like it or not.
Yes.
You can't sit there and go, you know what, I'm not going to worry about money. Because one of the things, like, my daughter was looking at some pictures of me before I had a child, before marriage, before uh, student loan debt. And she's like, you look so young and fresh. And I said, because I didn't have a lot of the things that I've had to deal with. And then she's like, well, what's the difference now? And I said, now I have wisdom. I've traded off a lot of some of that, and I've had struggles. And she's, people were commenting, oh, your beard's turning gray and you're starting to get some gray hairs. And I said, each one of those gray hairs is knowledge that I have
Yes.
accumulated, and I think that the idea is that if we can assist people on finding that knowledge earlier, on finding ways to acquire it sooner, and to remove a lot of the stigma about asking the right questions. I like this one, and I'm actually going to get to interview her on here on my podcast. This girl, and she runs a TikTok, Instagram called Salary Transparent Street, and she goes out and interviews people on the street. What's your job and how much do you make? And one of the things that I started looking at, and there were two sides to this that I thought. First of all, it was really interesting to find out how much different jobs make, because you're really surprised by certain things. And certain jobs are chronically underpaid, like being a teacher. Like, goodness gracious, we need to pay teachers better because it's such a foundational job in our whole system. But it's also interesting that when people watched that, you could see some of the comments were like, well, I'm never going to study that. But that's not always the right response. certainly some jobs pay really high, but that doesn't mean that that's what you should go do. Just like what you were talking about with like gecko farming or whatever it might
Yes.
be, that's that
Yes.
trend, because we've passed beyond salamanders and we've crossed into geckos now.
Yes.
I have a bunch of geckos. I don't want to farm them. It's not an easy thing. Now, when you start looking at these things, though, if you start following every trend, like what I was reading is the new top job for Gen Z on the projected job list is to become an influencer or a content creator.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's your message? I taught at university, and I taught a class called it was like introductory to content creation. And all these people like taking this class, and they're like, I want to be a content creator. And I was like, what story do you want to tell?
Yeah.
What are you? Well, I just want to be rich. Oh, okay. Well, let's come back to that. Why do you want to be rich? What story do you want to tell?
Yeah.
And I was like, and it was just crickets. And then finally I get the kid, and one student was like, I like my car. I like cars. And I was like, okay, cool. Talk to me about that. That's a good thing. Why do you like your car? And then he went on this story. He told me a story about why he loved his car. And I said, that's something that's worthwhile telling people.
Yeah.
If you're a car guy and you love cars, go out and tell that story.
Yeah.
That's your story. And, maybe, and because at the end of the day, it wasn't about the cars. It was about the story was how he grew up working on cars with his dad, and his dad had passed away. And now the memory that he had of his dad was anchored in his love of cars. And I said, okay, now we're talking. Now you have a purpose for your content creation. And other people, one girl was like, I want to make content about, I'm pre-med and I love chemistry. And I know a lot of people don't go into medicine because they're intimidated by chemistry. But I want to tell you, the chemistry is cool. Like, you can mix these chemicals and you can create amazing compounds that can do really bad things or really good things. And she's like, and that's cool to me, because there were people a long time ago who said, hey, let's mix these things. Wow, that Tom just died over there. Those shouldn't be mixed. Or, wow, we mix these things. Now Bobby doesn't have diabetes anymore. Like, whoa, that's amazing. And it was like, it was from them identifying their stories that they wanted to tell. And I just was blown away by these young people and these lights that started coming on as they realized they didn't want to be a content creator. They wanted to be a storyteller. They wanted to be an influencer, not because it was going to make them rich, but because they realized they had something worth telling.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't about the money.
Social media is transforming. I tell people social media it's still in its teenage years, hasn't quite figured out what it wants to be, and we haven't quite figured out what we want to do with it. But it's good. It's interesting to watch it evolve. I think it's important, as you suggest, as folks evaluate these opportunities. Sometimes the best way to conduct that evaluation is to take it to its extremes. You want to be a content creator. You want to make money. Great. What is the what is the best and most proven method? Because people look at an influencer who has 1,000 or 1 million followers, and they're like, "Wow, so and so has 1 million followers. That's what I want." Well,
yeah,
you can get 1 million followers. All you got to do is write a check. I mean, there's plenty of I should say legal and gray market ways to acquire followers for the right and wrong reasons. If you got a nice body, you can acquire followers. But of course, do you want that audience? And we've seen through COVID, a lot of folks don't know the story behind OnlyFans was a struggling business, and from what I've heard, was probably not going to make it. And then came COVID. And we all went home, and one thing led to another. Next thing you know, OnlyFans is a thing. And if you evaluate that from, okay, let's take this to its extreme. You want to be a content creator and you want to make money. Well, you should open up an OnlyFans account.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's look at that. And is count now years later, of course, hindsight is 2020. There's countless examples of now hundreds and soon to be thousands of multi-millionaire OnlyFans content creators who have now exited that machine, and they're completely empty, completely broken, completely hopeless. They have tens of
Yeah.
millions of dollars in their accounts, and they are broken. And it's a great example, as you suggest. If you serve money, right, that's not always a great thing. And my among us friends, we always make the joke, well, if all else fails, I'll just sell my feet pics on OnlyFans, because that's a thing too, which is really weird. And it's a cliche amongst our friends because it's just stupid, but people fall into this temptation because
Yeah.
it's the modern era get rich quick scheme, as we used to refer to it. People don't use that expression as much anymore. It's ironic. We used to use the expression get rich quick. No one says that anymore
Because they
because
do.
I think I think that's just expected.
Yeah.
30, 50 years ago, get rich quick was a nice surprise. In the modern world, get rich quick is the bar. Is expect
Yeah.
I true story. I saw a post a short time ago from a gentleman online who said, true story, if I'm not a billionaire by the time I'm 25, I'm just going to kill myself. Because
Wow.
again, that's the bar. That's what everyone
Yeah.
expects, which is sad. Because then what? At the age of 25, you have $1 billion. Then what are you going to do? You got another 40 years to go. Anyway, that's all.
It's like the genie is out of the bottle. You know,
Yes.
you rub it, the lamp, and the genie pops out, and you're like, I want this. I want this. Well, what happens when you get those things?
Right. Careful what you wish.
And you go back to Midas's touch.
Yes.
I have right now, my wife is traveling, and she just called me, and I said, 10 more minutes. I'm looking forward to chatting with you. I have 10 more minutes of my podcast. I love you. And right now, right over here, my daughter is napping. And anytime my wife travels, we camp out in my office. It's one of her
Right.
favorite things. She loves to do it. She's like, can
Wow.
we get sleep downstairs tonight? And so she set up the little mattresses. And after this, we're going to curl up and I'll throw on blankets and it's nice and cool in here. And I get to sleep next to my 9-year-old and we have a camp out in my office. If anything were to take away from this, it's not worth it to me. I do this YouTube channel with my daughter, Ilani's Little World.
Wow.
And it's about teaching kids fun things. And this last filming that we had was not as easy. She's getting older and it's not as natural for her. So we'll find a way to make it fun again. It used to be fun and just these imagination trips, But she had a tough time in this last filming. And I was like, you're such a smart little girl. And you talk to me, you ask me all these questions. And then when we film, you're like, yeah, uh-huh. And you're kind of silly like that. And I stopped and I said, and then she started crying. She's like, I don't know what's going on. And I said, Ilani, I don't care about Ilani's Little World. I don't care about that. I care about Ilani. I care about you. If you told me tomorrow that you want to stop that, then we're done because it doesn't matter to me. Like, I think I create fun content and kids like it and like we can help people, but I just want to help you be happy and be content. And she stopped and she's like, I actually really like doing it, but I just get nervous. And I said, okay, well, we can find a way so that you're not nervous. I said, if you like doing it with me, then we keep doing it. If you don't like doing it, then we stop. She's like, no, I really enjoy it, but I just get nervous sometimes. And I was like, okay, well, we can talk about how to not be as nervous. But at the end of the day, that was my why. And I think that one of the things that comes with age is that your why becomes more fine-tuned. And if nothing else comes with age but that, then getting older is a great thing because you start to see your why. And maybe you can't figure out your why for a long time. Maybe it's not till you see your grandkids, But for me, you know, I think when I had my daughter, my why became crystallized. And why I do my podcast. I have multiple podcasts. I have lots of content that I put out with my wife, my daughter, my family. And it's always because, and I was a children's teacher for many, many years, taught English and Asia to children. And I am constantly reminded that there are little kids out there that need hope, that need
Yes.
light. And that's my why. And I figured it out years ago as a teacher. And if I could make $100 million as a teacher, man, I'd do it, But right now, I am doing what I have to so that I can reach more children. And so, Ilani's Little World, I'm doing what I can do through my podcast to reach more parents, to help them reach children and
Yes.
help those kids. Because if we can reach a generation of young people and steer them and guide them, this world can be a more kind and loving place.
Yes.
And if we're not doing that, what are we doing, man?
Yes. Yeah. You, my friend, have true wealth. I can say that for sure. If I might add, I suggest to all my friends who have young children, make less money, spend more time with your kids.
Yeah.
That's one regret you will not have. That's something that I encourage everyone to do. I have many regrets. I'm a workaholic. I had wished I had taken more time. I have a great wife. She made up for it, I think. I wish I had taken more time to spend with my kids when they were young. Because once someone told me the other day that once your kids, how old is your daughter?
9.
Yeah, I'm told that once your kids reach the age of 11, your ability to influence them reduces significantly.
So much less. 100%.
Yeah, so that time is very precious.
Yeah.
But if I might, in the last moments, something else I might
it.
encourage the audience. Although, when we're kids, we play sports, and when we play sports, we're taught one team must win and one team must lose.
100%.
And so we go out into the world, and we approach every transaction in the same way. Business transaction: one team must win. You're buying a car. One team must win. One team must lose. But I'm going to suggest very controversial idea. In fact, that's not necessarily the case. It doesn't have to be that way. In business, it is possible to have a win-win. You can structure transactions to benefit both parties. I know some people aren't going to play nice. You shouldn't be doing business with them. But in each case, when possible, you can structure transactions to be win-win. If we're talking about rising tide lifts all boats, we have to do more win-win.
Yeah.
This win-lose thing isn't serving us well.
I 100% agree. If you could, and I think that you hit the nail on the head with the a rising tide lifts all boats. I don't think it gets more. I don't think you can summarize what we're talking about more than that. Are you able to lift up the people around you? And it doesn't have to be with money. It could be, this morning, I didn't lift my wife up with money. I lifted her up with hope. And it might be the hope that you carry for someone.
Love. Yes.
Love.
Yes.
You can lift people up with your... I woke up super discouraged, and I've been using AI in a way to be my pep coach. And there's some certain people that I absolutely love. And I said, this is where I'm at today. Can you tell me some positive feedback, and in ways that I can start approaching my day that can help? And I read this little thing, and I got my head together straight. And I started working. I absolutely love Admiral William McRaven. Such a great writer. If you haven't read him much.
No.
Oh, look up Admiral William McRaven. He's got a book, Make Your Bed, I think. And he was special forces guy. It was the guy in charge of I believe catching Osama bin Laden.
Wow.
And they were one of the people in that group. And his book is about, you want to get big things done, start off with making your bed.
Yes, I've heard of that. Yes.
That's him.
Yes.
That is him, and that was his graduation speech that he gave these students, and it became his book. But, those little things that you do to get your day right. And I started my day, and I went over, and my team was like, wow, you're really happy today and not positive. And it just made them feel positive. And I said, yeah, I just started my day right.
Yes.
You know? So it's a way. I mean, we can lift people up if we want to.
I'd suggest start every day in prayer, but that's just me being a Bible thumping Jesus freak,
I,
which
I
I'll
love
never
it, man.
pass up an opportunity to do.
And I think that is, what is the cup that you draw from? Every
Right.
day you need to look at
Yes.
that. What
Yes.
is the cup that you're drawing from? Is it, or is your cup empty? So many of us are walking around with empty cups, and you need to find ways to refill that. My father is a Bible thumping Jesus freak, but one of the
I've got
things
you
that
saying it now.
one of the things that he always did was that he recognized there were many ways to see God's beauty and grace. And for him, we would go to church all the time. But there were weeks where he would say, all right, we're not going to church today. Well, where are we going? We are going out to nature. And he would take us out and he would take us to the mountains. And we'd get up in the mountains and I said, why are we here today? Not at church. And he's like, because this is God's creation as well. And we are going to come here and find God in the rivers and in the mountains. And we would sit and we would pray. And, he would say, sometimes you come here and you can hear that still small voice. And so whatever it is that you need to do to fill your cup, fill it. And
Well,
hopefully you can fill the people around you as well.
I'll share my secret if
I'd
I
love to hear
might.
it.
I've done posts on this. For me, everyone's different. For me, the fastest and most effective way to fill your cup is to pour love into someone else. The act of pouring love into someone else fills your own cup. And as I've learned in my life from our Creator, we are provided with an infinite quantity of love. You cannot run out. You cannot run out of love when you're pouring
Yeah.
it into other people.
I love that.
You have an infinite supply. We think we have a scarcity mentality. No, the amount of love in the universe is infinite from our Creator. And the more you pour out, the more you receive, which is kind of counterintuitive, but I'm telling you, it works.